Welcome back to Steel and Vance. Oh, hop on the bus, Linda. Do you take the bus?
You know, I don't actually, but I take the Canada Line a lot
Right.
and the SkyTrain a little bit, although I never really know where I'm going with SkyTrain. I'm like, where's the map, you know? But it's so efficient.
It is.
I mean, I love it, and I do remember we were talking earlier that when I first moved here, everybody hated TransLink. Oh, big bad organization. And then they managed to turn it around, and then the pandemic hit and all sorts of challenges. So we got a lot to talk about with our next guest.
I will tell you this in terms of how much I appreciate as a mother transit. Oh, and that compass card. My son, boy, he uses his compass card. I dig the auto load. I applaud kids who love taking transit. And I want one of these elf cards. Derek, I want one of these. I wonder if
they're lining up for those right now, like a special edition. There's little pop-ups. Go on Google TransLink and see where you can buy
Do you think
one.
our guest brought us some, do you think?
I don't know. I don't think so. But our next guest, let's introduce him.
Okay, let's.
Is the CEO of TransLink, Kevin
deal.
Quinn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I see your hands are empty. So apparently...
not a great way to start an interview. I'm going to be honest. You know?
Okay, well, I'll hopefully get a little in here. Elf, obviously, 'tis the season, but I understand you and I share something in common with our love of Lord of the Rings. Perhaps we could have our favorite Lord of the Rings character compass card.
I'm going to work on that.
Okay, well, there was
we'll
Marvel, or DC, right?
Yeah,
There was
DC, that's right, yeah. We'll see if we can get some Lord of the Rings characters on board.
I want to
got it
ask you
in
one
there.
question about these cards that are always super popular when you guys do something special. They're like $34 or something.
Yeah.
Why so much? Where's that money going?
Yeah, so part of that is revenue that comes back into TransLink that we can put towards putting more service out there. So it goes to pay the bills.
Right.
So this leads directly into the headline about, hey, if
Sure.
we don't figure this out real quick, we're
Yeah.
not so far away from saying, "Ugh, we're out of money." Can you explain that to our viewers, how we got to here?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, we sit here today in a good financially stable situation through the relief funding that we've gotten through the province throughout the pandemic. So, between the province and the federal government, over $1 billion in relief to keep services running at near 100% levels. We're stable until the end of 2025. And then we go into 2026 and we have a significant financial gap of about $600 million per year. And that's created by a combination of two things. So first is rising costs, right? So everything's costing more. Inflation, materials, fuel, right? So as you might imagine, running a bus company, we go through a lot of fuel. In 2022, we spent 50% more on fuel than the year before, and that continues to increase, right? So everything's just more expensive. Secondly, compounding on that is that our revenues are down, primarily from the fuel taxes and from fares. So on fares from riders, so we're at 90% ridership recovery. That's great.
Yeah.
We're leading North America.
Really?
Very
That's
cool.
great.
But we're not at 100%. And in addition, we kept fare increases low over the past few years, either not increasing fares or having lower than expected fares. So as a result, that fare revenue sitting here today is down. And on the fuel tax, we know that there's more fuel-efficient vehicles out on the road. There's EVs that aren't filling up at the pump, right? Yeah. And so that also creates a gap. So between these rising costs and lower amount of money coming in, the lower revenue coming in, it creates this financial gap.
Yeah, not to mention that, I mean, we've got kind of a cutoff date for, is it 2030 when they're trying to make all vehicles sold EVs?
EV.
So clearly people are not going to be going to the pumps very often.
You got it.
And there's already this idea that people say, well, why should motorists be subsidizing transit riders anyway?
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, I'd say that, helping to pay for transit, number one, it gets cars off the road, right? So that's less congestion that you as a driver are driving through, right? I also would put in context that, TransLink is a multimodal transportation authority, which is a unique model in North America where, we have 5 bridges, including the Golden Ears Bridge, for example, that we oversee. So if you're taking the Golden Ears Bridge, some of that tax money is going to that. Also bike lanes, we do a lot of grants with municipalities. We have the C-Bus, the SkyTrain, the West Coast Express, the 3rd largest bus system in Canada.
Yeah.
And so taken together, I think as a motorist, those fees are going towards making your commute better and maybe helping employees get to work, helping your kids get to school, my kids get to school, right?
Love
so
that
those
compass
dollars
card.
go towards a really comprehensive transportation system.
Comprehensive transportation system, like you said, all of what makes us world class are growing really quickly here. The one thing as a born and raised Vancouverite that's always frustrated me as a shift worker for a lot of my life is how it ends.
Yeah. Sure.
Are we any closer to time where we might see 24-hour transit?
Well, so you're getting at how we think we need to expand, right? So this region is growing very, very quickly, right? So we were projected to grow at about 50,000 new residents per year. The last 2 years we saw 70,000 plus, and we think that's going to continue. You know, in the next 25 years we'll have 1 million more people in this region. And so think about that. Think about 1 million more people on the roads.
Yeah.
Think about what congestion is
Don't do
today
that to me.
at 1 million people, right?
Oh, no.
And so one of the areas that we think we need to grow, and that we need to grow in the next year, and that part of our advocating to provincial and federal governments is for funding to do exactly this, to you know, expand our span of services, have those buses running in off-peak hours more frequently. We know that's what's going to get people out of cars, and we know for a lot of shift workers, that's when they need the service, right? They need it those early morning hours, those late night hours. It's not everybody is traveling during that peak 9 to 5 anymore. Travel, you know, COVID really changed travel patterns, and we have so many new industrial areas that are working those shift schedules. And so a lot of our advocacy is to serve you know, employees exactly like that.
You know what else people say they want and need is more bathrooms, more public bathrooms.
sure.
And right now there's only certain places where you can go. I mean, what are you doing on that front?
Yeah, so our 10-year plan, our Access for Everyone plan, envisions has funding for 6 washrooms. So
6 only?
6 washrooms. So we are looking at how to implement these, and you know, it's a sensitive topic. You know, I'll just say, so I have 2 kids. I have a 14-year-old and 11-year-old, and I've been with my son on the system, and he turns to me and says,
I gotta go.
I gotta go,
Yeah.
right? And I look at him. I'm the CEO of the system, and I say, I can't help you, buddy, right?
Oh, no.
What are we gonna do? So, you know, right now we just have those washrooms at the C-bus terminals.
Right.
So we do have washrooms there, and so we do have plans to outfit outstations where people can go. We want to have attendants there. We want to be sure they're clean. So we are putting together an implementation plan. We hope to roll out our first washroom in 2024. There's a lot of other systems, I'll say, that have rolled out washrooms, and you've got to handle those sensitively, like who's using the washrooms and how are they cleaned and how are they monitored. It's all about safety.
Yeah,
you got
brings us right there, because safety on transit has been a very hot topic. Not so much here as it has been certainly in Ontario. It was very big, continues to be a big headline in Ontario.
Sure.
How is it that we keep and continue to keep our transit safe and accessible? You mentioned accessibility. A good friend of ours who we work with takes a bus to and from work every day in a wheelchair, and he struggles because sometimes it's like, well, elevator doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, those two things together, safety and accessibility, I think work hand in hand, do they not?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So maybe safety. We'll
Yes.
tackle safety
Sorry,
first.
double question.
I have so much to say on
Double
both.
question.
So on the safety aspect, so you know, crime-wise, our stats are really positive. Crime is actually down on the system about 20% year over year.
Really? Good.
That said, our mental health-related incidents are up about 15%. And so, you know, there's always this difference between safety and kind of perception of safety. And perception is reality, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've done a few things. You know, one is we've rolled out more SkyTrain attendants. Our transit police force, you know, TransLink is actually the only system in Canada that has its own dedicated transit police force.
Really?
We're the only one, yeah. And so 190-ish sworn officers out on the system. We're going to be adding more police. We're adding community safety officers, 24 community safety officers. That's a lower tier police officer that's trained in de-escalation, working with individuals with mental health challenges.
Yeah.
So we've rolled out 12 of those officers. Another 12 are in training. You know, people really like seeing presence out on the system. That said, we know that we can't put a police officer or a community safety officer everywhere. And so we do try to put information in people's hands. So we have a text line that we've been advertising, 877777. My daughter is a bus rider, my son's a bus rider, I'm a bus rider, and I make sure that they have this, because I say, hey, if something's happening to you, you know, use this text line. It puts you immediately in a live chat with one of our police dispatchers, and you can say, hey, you know, I don't feel safe, or I'm witnessing something, and in live chat they can dispatch an officer
Say
really
the number again.
pretty quickly.
For somebody's going, what number?
Sure, 877777, and put it in your phone, and again, immediately into a live chat with police.
You know, every winter, you know, we're all shocked when it snows in Metro Vancouver, and then the buses can't go anywhere and they're spinning out. You've tried different things, but we have some video, and this was of bus passengers that were trying to push a bus out actually of the snow.
Not ideal.
No. So
ideal.
this year you have winter tires you're testing?
Yeah, so previously we had the highest rated all-season tire possible out on our buses. And so Michelin has now actually made a snow tire specific for buses. So up until this point, a lot of people on their cars, you've got your snow tires, your non-snow tires, right? So finally, we are going to pilot out on a few hundred buses these new tires, these snow tires. We're going to see how they do in the snow. We're hopeful, some testing. There's
only so much you can do with the snow in this town.
I mean,
oh my God.
And I'll just say, we're hopeful.
Yeah.
I will caution that, the buses are only as good as the roads that they're on.
Yeah.
And so, it all comes down to plowing. Whether you're on a bike, in a car, in a bus, if that road hasn't been plowed or has several inches of snow on it, I'm sorry, it's going to have
It's going to be a day. Best to shelter in place when it snows in the lower mainland. I think that's safe to say. Okay, now I'll go back to my long-winded second half of the question on disability and accessibility.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Just where are we at with that? There are so many people who struggle to get around.
That's right.
And transit is so important.
Yeah. So I'll note we have two community groups, two user advisory groups. One that's our transit access user advisory group that's really focused on the accessibility of the system. We also have our Handy Dart user advisory group that informs us. And so we really draw from the community to get input and feedback on how we're doing and where we can improve. And I'm really proud to say that just a couple weeks ago we announced that we installed 8,400 Braille signs on our bus stops. We're the first system in Canada to do that, right? So Braille signs out there, as well as tactile walking strips for the blind or visually impaired at all TransLink owned stops. We're hoping to roll that out even further.
Great.
And so accessibility has been just, it's really a core part of what we do, because what we know is when we have an accessible system, it's accessible for everyone, right? Those improvements help everyone on the system.
Well, for one, I think TransLink does a really good job. I think your people work hard.
They do.
I think the system is, generally speaking, clean and efficient, so bravo.
Yeah, we're lucky.
And good luck to you in 2024. There's always so many challenges.
Squeeze in one more
Thank
thing.
you, sure.
Go into the valley, like getting out to the Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
What's our deadline for making that a reality for people who are stuck
Sure.
on
So,
two stretches?
so our 10-year plan talks about those interregional trips, whether that's the Fraser Valley or up the Sea to Sky corridor, right? So we do, as our region gets bigger, you start to turn into like a mega region, right? And those interregional trips become even more important. And so we're having some good conversations with, BC Transit. We sort of cross jurisdictional lines when you go into those conversations, talking with the province. And so we're hopeful that, at some point we're going to be able to roll out some interregional services.
Oh yeah, everybody there. Their 2-hour commute home is going, come on.
Everybody at 264th going, really?
Yeah.
Really?
10 years?
Thank you for coming in.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. Kevin Quinn, TransLink CEO.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Lord of the Rings, compass cards.
There you go. We're going to work on it.
Still ahead, a Canadian TV anchor claps back at the trolls, Jody. As a couple of female TV veterans, we have thoughts on the growing nastiness aimed at women in broadcasting. Stay tuned for that.
All right, viewing party, let's get at her. Here we go. Gordon in Steveston.
Margaret in Cloverdale.
Hey there, Marilyn in Yaletown. Thanks for this.
And Maureen in Vancouver. Thank you all to watch.
Stay tuned. You might have won a ProMed Eye Health prize package. You want to send us a photo? Viewing party at chekmedia.ca.